In this video, we're going to talk about solving absolute value equations. So I want to go over 5 quick examples with you guys, and the steps that I'm going to use are listed at the top of your notes. So we're going to talk through those with these examples. For example 1, we have the absolute value of x plus 2 is equal to 6. So we can see the absolute value symbol in this example is already by itself. There's nothing extra on the outside that we would need to move first. So let's go ahead and set up 2 equations, one positive and one negative. So x plus 2 equals positive 6, and x plus 2 is equal to negative 6. And then we want to solve both equations. So to get x by itself, I would want to subtract 2 from both sides. And we can do the same thing with the second equation because the x plus 2 on the left is the same for both. So x would equal 6 minus 2, which is 4, and x equals negative 6 minus 2, which is negative 8. So now what I want you to do is check your answer using Desmos. And so in order to check with Desmos, we have to get everything on one side. And so we have the absolute value of x plus 2 equals 6. So what we need to do is we need to move the 6 over. So we need to say the absolute value of x plus 2 minus 6. So that way we're typing in a function like y equals. So let's say y equals, and then you have the absolute value symbol right there above the ABC button. And then type x plus 2, and then move over outside the absolute value symbol and do minus 6. So notice that on the x-axis, it crosses at the 2 numbers we found, which are 4 and negative 8. So we have now checked our answer in Desmos. All right, let's go on to example number 2. So first we check to see if the absolute value symbol is by itself, and it is not. We have this 2 right here. So using inverse operations, we're going to move that 2 so that the absolute value of x is by itself. And now you have the absolute value of x is 6 minus 2, which is 4, and that 2 is now out of the way. So let's set up our 2 equations, one positive and one negative. So drop the absolute value bars and say x is equal to 4 and x is equal to negative 4. And so then you notice there's no more work to be done, so you've actually already solved the equation. So go back to your original problem, and we kind of need to rewrite it in order to type it in Desmos to check it. So we had the absolute value of x plus 2 equals 6. We've got to get it into y equals form. So we got to get this 6 over here to the left. So let's say the absolute value of x plus 2 minus 6, which you can actually type in Desmos, or you can put them together, which would be a little nicer. So let's put minus 4 is equal to 0. But instead of putting equals 0, let's just write y equals over there on the far left like we normally see it. So we're just getting everything to one side and then put y equals to make Desmos understand. We're basically turning it into a function. So that way it works properly into Desmos. So we check our answer by looking at where it crosses the x-axis. And we can see that 4 and negative 4 are both answers. So we're good with number 2. Let's look at example number 3. So we first check to see if the absolute value symbols are by themselves, which they are. So go ahead and set up your 2 equations, one positive and one negative. So drop the absolute value symbols and write 2x plus 5 equals positive 9, and 2x plus 5 is equal to negative 9. Then we're going to solve both equations. So let's subtract 5 from both sides, and you can do it with both equations, or you can do one at a time. All right, so bring down 2x is equal to 9 minus 5, which is 4, and 2x equals negative 9 minus 5, which is negative 14. And then we can divide by 2, and we get x is equal to 2, and x is equal to negative 7. Okay, So we just need to rewrite our problem so we could type it into Desmos. So we have the absolute value of 2x plus 5 equals 9. So let's subtract 9 to get it on the other side, and we would have the absolute value of 2x plus 5 minus 9, and then let's just put y equals in the front to make it look like a function. So put y equals, get your absolute value symbol, 2x plus 5, then make sure you move outside the absolute value symbol and then subtract the 9. Click on the x-axis and we can see we have two solutions that indeed do match. They match what we got is what I'm trying to say. Okay, so let's go on to number 4. We just have two more examples to take a look at to get you started. So number 4, we have the absolute value of x, but it is not by itself. So let's do the adding and subtracting first. So it has plus 5. I'm going to move it by subtracting 5. So let's bring down negative 3 times the absolute value of x is equal to negative 11. And then let's do division to get rid of the negative 3 that's being multiplied. Think inverse operations to move these numbers away. So you have the absolute value of x is equal to positive 11 thirds. And then you can set up your two equations. So you just have x equals positive 11 thirds and x equals negative 11 thirds. And you notice there's no more work to do to solve those. So let's work on typing it into Desmos. So let's write Desmos. So that way you know when you look back at your notes that this is what we were doing over here. So we have negative 3 times the absolute value of x plus 5 equals negative 6. The main thing you're focused on is moving what's on the right over to the left. It doesn't really have to look pretty, but we just have to move it over. So if we have negative 6 over there, we need to add 6 to move it over. So 5 plus 6 will give us 11. And then we're just going to put y equals, so that way Desmos thinks it's a function, which is okay for us to help check our work. So we have y equals negative 3, then hit the absolute value button, put your x inside, and then move over so you're outside the absolute value to hit plus 11. And then we can see that number, and you can easily check it, just hit the next step underneath your function and type 11 divided by 3. And you notice that that's the answer on the x-axis that was on the right. And if you do negative 11 divided by 3, then you can tell that that was actually the one that was on the left. So see, they match what we got by solving by hand. So it's a nice quick way to check your work. Okay, just one more example. So we check our absolute value symbol, make sure it's by itself, and it is not. So we have 4 times the absolute value. Let's divide both sides by 4 to move it. Bring down what's left. So you have the absolute value of 2x minus 6 is equal to 8. Then we set up two equations. So drop the absolute value symbol at that point and say 2x minus 6 equals positive 8 and 2x minus 6 equals negative 8. Then we're going to work on solving both equations. So let's add 6. Since it's being subtracted, we need to do the opposite operation or inverse operation. Bring down 2x is equal to 8 plus 6, which is 14. And on the right, we have 2x equals negative 8 plus 6, which is negative 2. Then let's divide by 2. Since 2 is multiplying x, we need to divide in order to get rid of it. Then you end up with x equals 7, and we end up with x equals negative 1. So last but not least, we just need to get it into the form that'll help us check it with Desmos. So let me get rid of what was in there from our number 4 example. And let's write 4 absolute value of 2x minus 6 equals 32. So we're going to subtract 32 from both sides just to move it over to the left. So you get 4 times the absolute value of 2x minus 6 minus 32. and then put y equals out front so that it's a function. So we have 4 absolute value of 2x minus 6 minus 32. And we click the x-axis and we can tell that our work did match Desmos. So we have x equals -1 and 7. All right, so that's it for this video. Hopefully that was helpful, and feel free to rewind as much as needed and rewatch.